My name is Rachel. I'm 38 years old, and I destroyed everything. My marriage, my family, my home. I had an affair, thinking it was just a phase, a mistake I could come back from. I thought my husband, Adam, would forgive me like loving husbands do in movies. I thought he'd be hurt. Yes, but then he'd move past it. That's what my sister told me would happen. She did the same thing years ago, and her fiancé left her, but I figured that was because she got caught too soon, didn't handle it right. I thought I was smarter. I thought I had control. I didn't. And now I'm watching my life fall apart in slow motion. Adam and I had been together since we were teenagers. I was 16 when we met. We grew up together, went to college together, and built a life piece by piece. We got married at 20, had 4 beautiful children, and by all accounts, our life was full. Not perfect, of course, but stable, loving, rich in moments. He was a good man, kind, attentive, the kind who always left love notes tucked into my bag, always made my favorite meal on long workdays. And I loved him, or I thought I did, until I didn't. Or maybe I still did. I don't know anymore. All I know is I ruined it. The affair didn't happen overnight. It was a slow unraveling, years in the making, though I didn't realize it at the time. It began with something that wasn't even about Adam. It was about me, about losing myself. 3 years ago, my best friend from school died of cancer. She was single, no kids, a partner at a law firm, wealthy, glamorous, always traveling, always doing something bold and exciting. When she passed, it shattered me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I began questioning everything. Was I fulfilled? Had I lived enough? Was I just wasting away in the routines of motherhood and marriage? It's ridiculous when I say it out loud. I had everything most people could dream of. A good job in marketing, a house full of laughter, a man who loved me, kids who adored me. But after my friend died, something inside me twisted. I started looking at my life through a warped lens. All I could see were the things I hadn't done, the people I hadn't kissed, the freedom I hadn't tasted. I convinced myself I was suffocating. I told myself I needed more. It started small, fantasies, what-ifs. I envied my sister, Clara, who'd been wild and reckless in her youth. She cheated once, before she was married. Her fiancé left her. She said it was the worst mistake of her life. She told me never to go down that road. But somehow, hearing her talk about it only made me more obsessed. I started romanticizing it, as if it were some secret key to a life I'd missed out on. 7 months ago, a new guy joined our team at work. Dylan. Younger, married, charming. He flirted. I flirted back. It was harmless, until it wasn't. One late work night turned into private messages. Then long, secret conversations. It felt exciting, like I was alive again. He said things Adam hadn't said in years. Things that made me feel wanted. Seen. We didn't sleep together immediately. For the first couple of months, it was emotional, intimate, intense. I was addicted to it. The rush. The validation. The fantasy. I started pulling away from Adam without even realizing it. I stopped being affectionate. I criticized him. I resented him for not being what Dylan was, even though Dylan was nothing but a stranger saying what I wanted to hear. And then it became physical. The first time was clumsy and underwhelming. But I told myself it would get better. It didn't. Dylan was selfish, distant, and clearly more invested in the thrill than in me. Still, I clung to it, chasing that initial rush. The affair dragged on, even as my guilt grew. I took it out on Adam, blaming him for the way I felt, snapping at him, accusing him of being cold when it was me who had gone numb. And Adam, God, he tried. He really tried. He brought home flowers, asked me to go out for date nights, made the kids help cook my favorite dinner. I ignored all of it. I told myself he was trying too late, that he was boring, predictable. I weaponized his loyalty. I twisted his love into something dull and ordinary. I wanted fireworks, not warmth. I wanted adventure, not stability. But slowly, Adam changed. He stopped trying. He stopped kissing me goodnight. He stopped leaving those notes. One day, I came home late from work, and there was no plate left for me. He'd cooked for the kids and himself. That was it. No welcome. No resentment. Just absence. I picked a fight. He walked out without a word. I didn't know it then, but I had already lost him. He wasn't angry anymore. He was done. I ended the affair a few weeks later. It was already crumbling. I had no desire to keep seeing Dylan. He'd gotten what he wanted, and so had I. But there was no victory in it, only emptiness. I started therapy. I began trying to be better, as if scrubbing floors and cooking meals could erase betrayal. I thought I could fix things if I just acted like the wife Adam used to love. But when I reached for his hand, he pulled away. And when I looked into his eyes, the love was gone. What terrified me most was that he didn't even look hurt anymore. He looked free. After that moment, when Adam pulled his hand away like my touch burned him, I knew something inside him had changed. Or maybe it had already changed long ago, and I had just refused to see it. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He didn't even cry. And that silence? It screamed louder than any words ever could. I tried to act like nothing had changed. I doubled down on my effort to be better. I cleaned the house until it sparkled. I wore the dresses he used to love. I cooked his favorite meals, lasagna, lemon chicken, the apple pie he always said reminded him of his childhood. I initiated intimacy, touched his arm gently when I passed by, tried to sit next to him on the couch during movies like we used to. But he wouldn't touch me, wouldn't look at me. He spent more and more time out of the house. Long drives, late returns. I'd ask him where he went, and he'd simply say, out. He didn't owe me explanations anymore, and deep down, I knew that. Still, I clung to the illusion that we could somehow come back from this. That this was just a phase, like everything else. Like raising babies, like job changes, like losing sleep. Something we could grow out of. But Adam had grown past me. One day, I came home and found him sitting in the kitchen with a half-empty cup of coffee in front of him. He was smiling, not at me, but at nothing. It was the first time in weeks I'd seen that expression on his face. I sat down across from him, heart pounding. "We need to talk," he said. The words froze me. I nodded, but my throat was dry. "I've known about the affair," he began. For a while, my stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. My mouth opened to speak, but nothing came out. "I waited," he continued, his voice eerily calm. "I waited for you to come clean. I thought maybe you would. I thought maybe we could talk about it, maybe salvage something. But you didn't. You just pretended." I stared at him, eyes wide, lips trembling. He wasn't angry. He was resigned. "I'm done pretending," he said. "I want a divorce." That word, divorce, landed like a blade across my chest. My breath caught, my vision blurred, my hands shook uncontrollably. I begged him to wait, to talk, to try. I told him it was over with Dylan, that it meant nothing. I told him I was broken, that I was lost, that I wanted to make things right. But Adam wasn't listening. Not really. He had heard everything he needed to hear the day I first chose someone else. He had seen the truth in my distance, in my coldness, in every cruel word I had used to justify my affair. I had already told him everything. I just hadn't used words. I ran to our bedroom, pulled out the confession I had written for him. Every detail of the affair, the timeline, the lies, all of it laid out in ink and shame. I shoved it into his hands, hoping it would make a difference. He didn't even read it. I offered him everything, a one-sided postnup, full financial control, access to all my devices. I even said he could have his own open marriage if he wanted. Anything, if he would just stay. And for the first time, I saw the pain flash in his eyes again. The same pain I had ignored so easily while I chased fantasies and flirted with destruction. But this time, I couldn't bear to see it. It tore something open in me. He looked away and said quietly, "You don't get to offer terms. This isn't a negotiation." He stood up. I reached for him instinctively, and he pulled back like I was a stranger. "Rachel," he said, "I loved you. Deeply. More than you'll ever understand. But I don't know who you are anymore. And I don't think I want to." He left, and I stayed at that kitchen table for what felt like hours. Maybe it was. Maybe it was just minutes. I don't know. Time had stopped. My sister, Clara, came to get me later that day. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember what she said. I just remember her driving, and me in the passenger seat, hollow and shaking, like something had been ripped out of my chest. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the silence Adam used to fill. I thought about how much love he used to show me. How his eyes used to light up when I walked into a room. How he used to touch me just because he couldn't help it. That man was gone now, and I had killed him. Not with words, but with betrayal. After Adam left, the house felt like a mausoleum. Every corner whispered memories I wasn't ready to face. I kept hoping he'd walk back through the door, that he'd change his mind, that he'd remember how much we had built. But days passed, then weeks, and the silence only deepened. I barely moved. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My chest ached like it had been hollowed out. My kids, God, my beautiful children, they started avoiding me. I tried to talk to them, but their eyes, so much like Adam's, were filled with confusion and hurt. They didn't understand, and how could they? One minute, we were a family. The next, their world had shattered, because of me. At night, the nightmares came. Adam's face, once soft with love, now cold and unreadable. I'd wake up gasping, heart racing, tears streaming. And during the day, guilt clung to me like a second skin. I saw reminders everywhere. The place he used to hang his jacket, the worn dip on his side of the bed, the smell of his cologne still lingering on our shared towels. Everything screamed you ruined this. I threw myself into therapy. My counselor tried to trace where it all started, where I began unraveling. We went back to the moment my friend died. The moment I started envying the life I never had. The freedom, the novelty, the adrenaline. I told myself I'd sacrificed all that for motherhood, for love, for stability. And then, I turned around and blamed Adam for it. Twisted my own choices into resentment. I still remember the first time Dylan flirted with me at work. It felt innocent, harmless. He complimented my smile, laughed at my jokes, made me feel like I was more than just mom or wife. I soaked it up, like a thirsty plant. I needed that validation. At least, that's what I told myself. Now I know better. What I needed was to deal with my insecurities. But instead, I fed them. Fed them lies, fantasy, escape. I ignored the consequences. And by the time I wanted out, it was too late. I tried contacting Adam. Dozens of texts, voice messages, emails. No response. I showed up at his work once. He didn't even look surprised to see me, just tired. He told me he had nothing left to say, that we had crossed a line we couldn't come back from. I told him I'd changed, that I was healing, that I was getting better. He said, "That's great for you, but it doesn't undo what you did to us." That night, I broke. I collapsed in Clara's hallway, screaming into the floor. She didn't try to comfort me. She just stood there, arms crossed, eyes filled with something between pity and rage. "You knew what this would do," she said. "You chose it anyway." I lashed out at her, told her she'd cheated too, that she had no right to judge me. She didn't flinch. "I lost everything because of it," she said. "And I warned you. You just didn't care." She was right. I didn't care. Not until the fantasy shattered and I was left with nothing but ash. I tried finding Dylan after that. Just to, I don't know, feel something. But he was gone. Transferred to another branch. Never returned my messages. Whatever we had, it was nothing. A flicker in the dark, quickly snuffed out. I had sacrificed a marriage, my children's stability, and my own dignity for a man who disappeared the moment things got real. The shame burned me from the inside out. And yet, part of me still hoped, still clung to the idea that maybe, just maybe, Adam would come back. That he'd see how much I regretted everything. That he'd remember the woman he fell in love with. So, I did the only thing I could. I wrote it all down. Every detail of the affair, every cruel word I said, every lie I told. A full confession. I attached it to a message begging for one last conversation. I told him he didn't even have to forgive me. I just wanted him to know how sorry I was. I sent it. He didn't reply. 2 days later, I got a message from Clara. "Adam posted on Reddit. I think you should read it." I opened the link with shaking hands. It was a post from him, my husband, the man I thought I knew better than anyone. In it, he laid everything bare. His pain, his heartbreak, his confusion. He even mentioned a woman from his past, someone he'd reconnected with, someone he respected enough not to pursue until our divorce was finalized. Reading it broke something in me I didn't know was still intact. He had moved on. He wasn't angry. He wasn't hurt. He was free, and I had no one to blame but myself. Reading Adam's Reddit post was like standing in front of a mirror I'd avoided for years. Every word exposed me, my betrayal, my delusions, my blind arrogance. He had bled onto that screen, shared the agony I caused him with strangers because he couldn't talk to me. And the worst part? He sounded more sane, more centered, and more at peace than I ever expected. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't vengeful. He was done. There was something terrifying about that kind of closure. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't vindictive. It was final. Still, I couldn't stop myself from trying. A few days after seeing the post, I sent another message. I told him I understood, that I deserved everything, that I just wanted to see him. One conversation, One chance. To my surprise, he agreed. That morning, I could barely breathe. My body shook as I got dressed. My sister Clara tried to calm me, but I could see it in her eyes. She didn't believe it would change anything. Neither did I, but I had to try. I had to look him in the eye and say what I should have said months ago. When Adam walked in, my heart nearly stopped. He looked thinner, colder, older, but in a way that made him seem unbreakable. Like life had already burned him, and now he was immune. He didn't greet me. He sat down across from me, folded his hands, and waited. I opened my mouth, but my throat closed. Tears came before words. I couldn't even speak. He waited, expression unreadable. When I finally managed to whisper, "I'm sorry," it felt so pitiful, so small, so late. He nodded, but didn't respond. That silence. It gutted me more than any insult ever could. I told him everything. Not just the affair, but why I let it happen. The insecurities, the jealousy, the death of my friend. The way I'd begun to see myself as someone trapped instead of someone blessed. He listened, but he didn't soften. He told me he had already been through his own storm. The heartbreak, the confusion, the disbelief, the months of pretending, hoping I'd wake up and come back to him. But I never did. And that silence, he said, killed the love. He told me about Monica, the woman from his past he'd reconnected with. How she respected him. How she knew what he was going through and didn't push him. And how she reminded him of who he used to be, before I turned him into a ghost of himself. "I'm not in love with you anymore," he said simply. "And I don't think I've been for a long time." Those words didn't just hurt. They shattered me. Still, I begged. I told him we could start over. That I would give him anything. Open phone, full access, one-sided open marriage, post-nup, everything in his favor. I told him I'd never speak to another man again. That I'd live the rest of my life proving I was sorry. He looked at me then. Not with love. Not even with anger. But with sadness. "I don't want a prisoner, Rachel," he said. "And I don't want to be your warden." He told me he didn't want an open marriage. Didn't want to constantly wonder who I was messaging or where I was going. He said intimacy meant nothing to him without trust. And I had destroyed that trust. I told him I'd go to HR and report everything. That I'd confess to Dylan's wife. That I'd humiliate myself publicly if it meant restoring even an ounce of respect in his eyes. And then he said something I'll never forget. "Respect can't be begged for, Rachel. It has to be earned. And sometimes, when it's lost, it's just gone." I broke down completely. Snot, sobs, choking on my own breath. I collapsed in front of him, clutching at the edge of his sleeve. He stood frozen, his hands clenched, his jaw tight. I could see the pain in his eyes again, but this time, it was buried beneath resolve. He helped me into a chair. Then he sat back down, and for a moment, we were quiet. "Why?" he asked. "Just, why did you throw us away?" And the truth? I didn't have an answer. I wanted freedom, excitement, something new, something else. But I didn't want to lose him. I didn't think I would. I thought he'd fight harder, forgive faster, love stronger. But he had nothing left. At the end of the conversation, he made one thing clear. The divorce was happening. He wanted 50-50 custody. No war. No drama. Just peace. "Be the mother they need," he said. "Because I can't protect them from this forever." He walked away after that. And I sat there, realizing that not only had I lost my husband, I had lost the only person who ever truly saw me. And now, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. After Adam walked away that day, I sat in that empty room for hours, surrounded by silence that screamed louder than any argument we'd ever had. I kept thinking, what else can I do? What else can I give? But deep down, I knew I'd already given too little, too late. And now, nothing I did would change what I had taken from him. I spiraled. The guilt began to consume me in ways I wasn't prepared for. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. How calm he had become, how distant. That kind of peace doesn't come from healing. It comes from letting go. He had let go of me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. That night, I collapsed in Clara's bathroom. I don't remember hitting the floor. I only remember the cold tiles, her screams, the flashing lights. I woke up in the hospital the next morning, hooked up to machines, the weight of my mistakes pressing down like a cinder block on my chest. Adam hadn't come. That truth hit me harder than the fall itself. Clara sat by my side, silent. Her eyes were red, but she didn't cry. Not for me. "You have to stop this," she said. You're destroying yourself now. But it felt like the only thing left to do. I had nothing else to offer him. So I turned to shame. If I couldn't fix the past, maybe I could expose it, own it. Strip away whatever pride I had left and face the truth, no matter how ugly it was. I started calling everyone. I called Dylan's wife. I told her everything, how long it had gone on, the details, the lies. She didn't cry. She just went quiet. Then she thanked me and hung up. I called his parents, my friends, my boss. I confessed everything. I resigned from my job. I told the truth, even when it hurt, even when it made them hate me. Especially then. And they did. They hated me. The judgment came swiftly. Friends who wouldn't answer, family members who told me I was dead to them. My phone became a device for punishment. Texts poured in from people I once loved, and all of them said the same thing. How could you? I didn't have an answer. Meanwhile, Adam remained quiet. He didn't return my messages. Didn't comment. Didn't show up. He was gone. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. A ghost I had created through neglect and betrayal. I missed him so badly it hurt to breathe. I missed the way he used to look at me. The way he'd brush hair from my face without a word. The way he'd whisper, "You're my whole world," when the lights were off and the kids were asleep. Now, he wouldn't even make eye contact. And the kids. God, the kids. They didn't understand the full story, but they felt the tension. They saw the distance. My oldest stopped talking to me altogether. The younger ones looked confused and afraid when I tried to hug them. I had turned their home into a war zone, their family into a broken memory in the making. I had done this. Me. And for what? A thrill that fizzled out in weeks. A man who disappeared when it got hard. A fantasy I'd built in my own head because I couldn't face my insecurities. I tried to rationalize it again, like I used to. Tried to tell myself I was unhappy, that Adam had changed, that we had grown apart. But none of it held weight anymore. The truth had become too clear. I had been selfish. I had betrayed the best man I'd ever known, and no amount of self-loathing would fix that. Still, I kept trying. I sent Adam a second confession, this time handwritten. I told him I'd started full transparency therapy, that I'd filed my own HR report, that I'd promised myself never to lie again, to anyone. I told him I was doing it not to win him back, but to become the kind of person I should have been all along. No reply. Days passed. Then a week. Then another. Clara told me to let go, but how could I? I wasn't just mourning the loss of a marriage. I was mourning the death of the woman I used to be. The mother. The wife. The partner. I had traded her in for someone who didn't deserve love. But I wasn't done yet. Because despite everything, there was still one thing I hadn't faced. What came next? If Adam wouldn't take me back, if the world wouldn't forgive me, then I had to learn how to forgive myself, even if it killed me trying. I thought the worst part was behind me. The confession, the collapse, the cold hospital bed with no Adam in sight. I thought exposing everything, surrendering every last piece of myself, would earn me some sliver of redemption. But the silence that followed was louder than ever. No messages. No phone calls. No reply to the handwritten letter I had poured my soul into. It was like I didn't exist anymore. Then, one night, after yet another sleepless stretch of guilt-drenched hours, I got a message. Not from Adam, but from Clara. "He agreed to meet you," she wrote. "But don't expect a miracle." I don't know how I made it through that day. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My stomach twisted with a nauseating mix of dread and desperation. This was it. The final shot. The last conversation. Maybe the last time I'd ever get to look into his eyes and say the things I should have said long before I ever crossed a line I couldn't uncross. We met at a small family center where we could talk in private, but with a mediator nearby, just in case. That's how far we'd fallen. From lovers and partners to estranged parents who needed supervision. Adam walked in, wearing a navy blue sweater I had bought him for his birthday 3 years ago. It used to fit snugly. Now it hung loose around his frame. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, but there was something else, something harder. A wall that hadn't been there before. I stood when he entered. He didn't smile, didn't nod. He just sat down, arms folded, waiting. I took a deep breath and started. I told him I had nothing to offer but truth, that I didn't expect forgiveness, that I just needed to tell him, face to face, that I was sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. "I know what I've done," I said, "and I know who I became. It disgusts me. I didn't just betray you. I betrayed our family, our children, myself. I can't undo that. but I can own it. He listened, stoic and still. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder, my full confession, a timeline, documentation of therapy, HR reports, even letters I had written to our kids for when they were older. I pushed it across the table. I don't expect you to read it, I said. But it's yours. You deserve to know everything. He looked at the folder, but didn't touch it. Why are you doing this? He asked quietly. Because it's the only thing I have left that's real, I whispered. He nodded slowly. I read your first confession. I didn't respond because I didn't know what to say. I still don't. I waited, holding my breath. I don't hate you, Rachel, he said. But I don't love you anymore either. And the more you try to fix this, the harder it is for me to remember why I ever did. Those words landed like a punch to the ribs. I told him I would do anything. Wait years, rebuild from the ground up, live without expectations, just be there in whatever way he'd allow. He shook his head. You're trying to reverse death. Our marriage died the moment you chose someone else. I begged for your attention. I begged for connection. And you didn't even look at me. I was broken, I said. So was I, he snapped. But I didn't run off and destroy our life. His voice broke on that last word. I reached for his hand, and for the first time in months, he didn't pull away immediately. But his hand was cold, unmoving, a memory of the man who used to hold mine like it was sacred. I don't trust you, he said. And without trust, there's no foundation, no future. I don't want to live my life checking your texts, wondering if a smile means something else. I won't be your prison guard. That's not love. He stood up then, slowly, deliberately. You need to let me go? For the kids. For yourself. Tears blurred my vision. Please, just tell me what to do to make this right. He looked down at me, and for the first time, I saw true sadness in his eyes. Not anger, not bitterness, just sorrow. There's nothing left to make right, Rachel. You broke it. All of it. And I don't think you even understand how deep the damage goes. He turned and walked toward the exit. Just before leaving, he paused and said without turning around, we'll talk about co-parenting. But beyond that, I don't think we should speak again for a while. And then he was gone. The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed in my bones. And I sat there, alone, understanding that this wasn't just heartbreak. It was the reckoning I had tried to outrun. After Adam walked out of that meeting room, something inside me crumbled in a way it never had before. Not from shock, not from guilt. Those were emotions I had already drowned in. No, this was something quieter, deeper. It was acceptance. I didn't want to believe it, but he had meant every word. His silence wasn't punishment. It wasn't bitterness. It was peace, the kind that only comes when someone has truly moved on. I had fought, begged, confessed, humiliated myself, exposed every wound I had. And yet, none of it brought him back. Because he was already gone. That night, I sat in the dark with only the ticking clock as company. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My tears had dried up weeks ago. I just sat there, staring at the wall, wondering how I had become this person. Not the cheater, not the liar, but the woman who had everything and still lost it all, because she didn't know how to be grateful until it was far too late. The next morning, Clara found me still sitting in the same spot. She didn't say anything, just handed me a cup of coffee and sat beside me. For the first time since this all began, her voice was gentle. You need to stop chasing what's already burned to ash, she said. It's killing you. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that there was still a spark, a sliver of hope. But I couldn't lie anymore, not even to myself. Adam had drawn his line in the sand. I had crossed it long ago, and now the distance between us was a canyon that couldn't be bridged. I tried to shift my focus to the children. If I couldn't be a wife, I could still be a mother. But even that had become complicated. They were hurting, confused, angry, withdrawn. My oldest wouldn't look me in the eye. My youngest, once so clingy, now hesitated before hugging me. I had turned their safe world into something unstable and foreign. We started family counseling. Adam and I sat in the same room, but we didn't talk unless it was about the kids. He was civil, composed, even kind, but only in the way you speak to a stranger you're forced to work with. There was no warmth, no flicker of the man who used to hold my hand during every school play and doctor's appointment. I missed him in a way that physically hurt. And yet, I was also starting to understand why he had let go, why he had needed to. One afternoon, after a particularly hard session with the children's therapist, Adam and I stayed behind for a moment. The counselor had stepped out, and we were alone. I stared at the floor, unsure if I should say anything. But then he spoke. I saw what you did. The letters. The resignation. The confession to everyone. I looked up, startled. And he nodded slowly. It was brave. Pointless, but brave. His words stung, but not like before. This time, they landed with weight, not sharpness. I'm not doing it to win you back anymore, I said. I know that's not happening. I'm doing it because I have to live with myself now. I have to be someone my children don't grow up resenting. He looked at me for a long time. Then focus on that. Be that person. For them. He stood to leave, but before he reached the door, I asked one last question. Do you ever think we could have made it? If I'd stopped before it got too far? He didn't turn around. Yes, but you didn't. And with that, he was gone again. The truth is, I don't hate him for walking away. I admire him for it. For protecting his peace. For not letting my regret chain him down. Because in some twisted way, that's what I had wanted. I had been hoping he would absorb all my guilt, carry it with me, fix the pieces I shattered. But Adam wasn't mine to lean on anymore. He had been mine. And I had broken that. Now, I had to rebuild on my own. Not for him. Not for forgiveness. But because it was the only way to stop being the villain in my own life. So, I got out of bed. I started volunteering. I threw myself into every moment with my kids that they would allow me to have. I stopped checking my phone, waiting for a message that would never come. And every day, I woke up trying to be just 1 ounce better than I was the day before. Not because I deserved happiness, but because I needed to learn how to live with what I had done, and somehow, still choose to be someone worth becoming. There's a strange silence that comes after the storm, the kind that doesn't feel peaceful, but hollow. That's what my life feels like now. Hollow. Weeks passed since that last conversation with Adam, and each day feels like I'm trying to walk through water, heavy and slow. But I still move. I wake up, I get dressed, I pack the kids' lunches, I go to work. I breathe. I exist. And I learn. I'm learning how to live in a world where Adam is no longer mine. I see him often, especially when we exchange the children, and every time I do, it cuts a little deeper. He doesn't look at me with anger or hatred, just calm detachment. Like I'm someone he used to know, and now we're nothing more than two people with shared responsibilities and fading history. But I don't cry in front of him anymore. I don't beg. I don't apologize over and over again. That's not because I've moved on. It's because I've learned that my sorrow can't buy back his love. That healing, real healing, isn't about changing the past. It's about owning it without demanding redemption. I started journaling everything. My therapist suggested it. At first, it felt forced, like I was writing letters to a version of myself I didn't want to meet again. But over time, I found clarity in the mess. I wrote about the nights I couldn't sleep, the moments I regretted the most, the fantasy I chased, and the reality I destroyed. I wrote about Adam's silence, about the way the kids look at him with safety in their eyes, and how I ache to earn that same trust again. One night, my oldest, Ava, asked me, "Mom, why aren't you and Dad together anymore?" I froze. Every instinct told me to lie, to water it down, to protect myself. But I didn't. I looked her in the eye and said, because I made a mistake. A very big one. And sometimes, mistakes break things that can't be fixed. She didn't say anything. She just nodded and walked away. But later that night, she hugged me. Not out of forgiveness. I could feel that. It was more like understanding. The beginning of something fragile, but real. I started attending parenting support groups. Listening to others, sharing my story when I could. It was humbling to admit what I'd done out loud to strangers, but oddly freeing. No one could hurt me more than I'd already hurt myself. And then, one afternoon, I got a call from Monica, the woman Adam had reconnected with. My stomach dropped when I saw her name flash across the screen. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She was calm, measured, kind, even. "I wanted you to hear it from me," she said. "Adam and I are going to start seeing each other. Officially." I stayed quiet. There was a ringing in my ears, a tightness in my throat. "He wanted to tell you himself," she continued, "but I asked if I could. I thought it might be easier, coming from someone who knows how complicated all this is." I managed to say, "Thank you for telling me." She paused, then said, "He still hurts, but he's starting to laugh again. I hope you find your own way forward too." After I hung up, I sat with the phone in my lap, staring at the blank wall. There it was. The last nail in the coffin of the life I had once built. He was really gone. But for the first time, I didn't fall apart. Instead, I stood up, walked to the mirror, and looked at the woman staring back at me. I didn't see a monster. I didn't see a victim. I saw someone who had caused incredible pain, but who was still trying to be better. And that had to be enough. Because now, it wasn't about winning Adam back. It wasn't even about forgiveness anymore. It was about being someone my children could be proud of. Someone who could look herself in the eye without flinching. Someone who would never again mistake selfishness for freedom or fantasy for love. The road ahead is long. I know that. I'll carry this burden for the rest of my life. Some nights, I'll still wake up in a cold sweat. Some days, I'll still reach for a phone I shouldn't touch. But I won't go back. I can't change the ending of our story, but I can honor it. By remembering every moment. By learning from every mistake. And by never, ever forgetting what it cost me to open my eyes. Looking back, I see now how dangerously easy it is to take love for granted. To believe that time and routine make someone unbreakable. But no one is unbreakable. Not even the person who once looked at you like you were their entire world. The truth is, betrayal doesn't begin with a kiss or a lie. It begins the moment you stop choosing the person you vowed to cherish. If there's anything I've learned, it's that regret is a poor currency for redemption. Once trust is shattered, no apology, no confession, no desperate plea can bring back what was lost. To those who've spent a lifetime with someone by your side, don't let the quiet seasons make you forget their worth. Talk to each other. Fight for connection, not attention. Don't wait until you've lost everything to remember what mattered most. I destroyed something sacred because I chased an illusion. And now I live each day trying to become someone who would have never done such a thing in the first place. If my story offers any wisdom, let it be this. Protect your love, not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. And once it's gone, all the sorrow in the world won't bring it back.